Alright guys, so now we can go ahead and talk about Muramasa, and this is one of those servants that I know a lot of people have been looking forward to for the longest time, ever since he was announced over on the JP version of the game. And not only is he hyped because Muramasa is super cool, but he's also insanely good. Like, this is one of the more crazy servants that they've ever released, because he just does a lot of really strong things at very high levels as well. It's not just the fact that it's oh, he's got crit damage, he's got insane crit damage, and potentially giga insane crit damage. They just gave him everything, right? Everything that he has is really dummy nutty. The only issue I really have with Muramasa is probably going to be his first skill, because you guys know that I like my 3-turn buffs, because I like my servants to last a little bit longer, but even that's not an issue for Muramasa, as we'll get into when we start talking about his NP. Before we begin, and if you want to have good luck summoning on Muramasa's banner, make sure you leave a like on the video and you subscribe to the channel for that sweet daily FGO content. Also, I stream every weekday over on my Twitch starting at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But with all those plugs out of the way, let's go ahead and start talking about Muramasa, starting off with his hits. Now, looking at Muramasa's hits, you kind of just look at him and don't really assume too much, because nothing here is really just blatantly broken. It's actually just looking like an average servant, and it's a little deceptive, right? He's got 3 hits on the double arts cards, but he's got 0.59% NP gain, so it's okay, we do a couple of crits, we might refund some NP back, but really nothing super insane going on here. 9.8% star gen on a 2-hit quick card. You're just man, this guy's not a star gen, which, yeah, go figure. He's your DPS slasher farmer guy, but they did give him the 5-hit extra attack, so we at least like to see that. But before we actually get into the main skills, since the hits are super average, I would say let's go ahead and talk about some of his passive skills, because his passive skills are all pretty good. You have more tame things like his magic resistance, just giving him a little bit of an edge against debuffs, but then you also have a 10% arts buff that's going to make those arts cards hit a little bit harder, and it's going to give him a little bit of extra NP gain. You have the fact that he has a passive special damage mod against king enemies, which is just a nice thing that he'll be able to have. It's never going to be something stupid, dummy, insane, but it is really neat to have because it comes up occasionally. And then he also just gives everybody a passive 5% crit buff while he's on the field, which again is pretty nice, nothing super insane, but it kind of makes him a bit more of a team player, right, if you want to look at it that way. But I think some of the more important things are the damage mod and that passive arts buff, because you have to calculate that into all of his other arts buffs, which he has 2, one from his skills and one from his NP. Speaking of his skills, let's start off with skill 1. Skill 1 is kind of the Emiya skill, just kind of cranked up to 11, because what it does is it gives him a 50% mana burst for all card types, quick, arts, and buster, while also bombing 15 stars on the board and giving him star weight at a massive 1000%, all for 1 turn on a 5-turn cooldown. And yeah, earlier, while I said I didn't really like the skill too much because it's all in 1 turn, it's a very powerful 1-turn buff that he's got going for him, because it's going to massively gas up his damage for all of his cards. In particular, if you're using it on farming, or you're using it whenever you fire his NP, the refund you get when you actually have this up is massively increased, because that arts buff is also increasing the NP gain of his arts cards, meaning you'll just get even more refund going. Plus, if for whatever reason, you've got an NP1 Muramasa and you're missing out on say a farm, it also gives him the ability to crack the enemy with a crit with any cards he has just lying around, and they're probably going to finish him off considering how massive his crit damage is and the fact that he's going to be getting this 50% mana burst for all of his cards. So yeah, overall, not bad for being what I would consider the skill I like the least, quote unquote, however you want to word that. And again, it's just the first skill. The second skill is where things start to get a little bit nutty. So he has the ability to pierce invincibility on his skill, and spoiler alert, he has the ability to pierce defense over on his NP. So basically, there is no running and hiding from Muramasa, but if you attempt to run or hide from him, he gets 100% crit damage against you. So not only is he going to pierce through your defenses, but he is going to punish you for trying to protect yourself in any capacity, while also just in general giving himself a 100% crit star generation buff and a 100% crit damage buff both for 3 turns on a 6-turn cooldown. So regardless, he's going to be doing really good crit damage. Keep in mind, 100% crit damage, that's what like Scotty gives to quick cards in particular, or what Merlin does for only 1 turn. This guy's got it for 3 turns, and he's also shoring up his star drop rate a little bit. Even still, like, I don't think he's that good of a star gen, but it at least helps him out a bit because arts cards have an inherent star genning value of 0. Increasing it by 100% for FGO means that like even arts cards now are guaranteed to at least drop 1 star per hit, which is really insane because it at least means that he can have some influx of stars going, especially on his NP. Even though it only has like 3 hits, it's not super impressive for like star genning. He can at least gen some stars to play around with. And then I just love the ability that he has the capability of just bypassing all invincibility or dodges or defense if you include his NP, and then he just punishes the enemy for even trying to shore up their defenses. Then finally, there's going to be his 3rd skill. So he has the 50% battery that everybody knows about. That's just like in general very good for fighting a boss to just get a massive glob of NP back that you can just use to clap back on them, or in farming if you miss out on a little bit of NP, this is going to pretty much guarantee that you'll be able to fire another one. You know, maybe you're using like an NP1 Muramasa and you're going to be more reliant on this battery. That can definitely help you out a lot. It also, you know, just in general lets you start off with any 50% starting charge CE if you need stuff like that. Just a lot of really good things in general. But then he gives himself this on attack buff that pretty much anytime he attacks with one of his normal cards, he's going to give himself 10% NP back. So again, even though I was like, oh, his, you know, refund might feel a little average because his NP gain is, you know, it's average and his hits are okay, this just kind of shores it up. It's like he has immediate NP that he's able to get, and then he's also just passively getting 10% back on whatever card he's clicking. Doesn't matter if it's Buster or his arts or his quick, doesn't matter. He's going to get that extra 10% back, and it just makes him really, really solid. Finally, let's just close out with the NP, because this has one of the more like broken effects for someone that's going to be a farming servant if you want to use him like this. So he's able to remove all the enemy's offensive buffs. That's really cool. We just mentioned the fact that he can pierce defense, but the crazy thing is that he's stacking 10% NP damage and 10% arts for 3 turns, and it procs first. This means that let's say you're in a boss fight or you're in like a farming scenario, it means that every NP Muramasa is going to do more and more damage, and his refund is going to get better and better. If you've used somebody like Jason, you felt this effect before, where like in the Christmas Lotto, you know, Jason would kind of struggle refunding wave 1, but then he would do really well on wave 2, and then wave 3 he was pretty much perfect. And that's because it's a very similar thing, except this one is on crack because he's stacking the NP damage as well that is multiplying into that arts buff to give him even more damage, so he builds up a lot faster. And it's just kind of like the nice bow on the top of this servant that is Muramasa, and it's why I've been like, yeah, if you want to summon for, say, Ibuki or something, keep in mind that Muramasa is coming out for New Year's, and he's not just good as a farmer. A lot of people are going to use him for farming. I myself, when, you know, I had my old JP account, I actually went in for NP2 on this guy because I thought he was so good, and on like even lower level archer nodes, I could get the dude to farm. Like, that's how kind of nutty he was able to farm, at least for NP2 in my experience. He couldn't farm anything that was like too big or anything, but then again, I didn't have Black Grail or anything, so I'm sure you could actually probably force him to do it. He was just really good at his job. Like, he was able to really put in a lot of work. And so that's why I've been really recommending people to be like, hey, if you're going to summon on X servant, keep in mind that like Muramasa is coming out on New Year's. Like, I know he's popular, but I really like need to enforce that he's just not only good for farming, but he's really good for boss fights as well. He's got a strong kit to deal with a lot of different bosses. The fact that like every boss pretty much has some kind of protection, and he's going to get an additional 100% crit damage when they try to protect themselves is really good. The fact that he can bypass invincibility and defense anyway means that even if they do throw up something, he's just going to get around it. The fact that he gets better as the fight goes on. The fact that he not only has a big immediate battery, but also can refund a lot of NP back with that blaze buff that he has, and then he has a really good ability to just like like do massive globs of damage with his first skill. Like it lets him do burst damage if that's what you need. Like he just kind of does everything really, really well. You could pretty much be assured that at the end of 2023, when we do the tier list again, already kind of laughing because I'm kind of ready. It's just funny doing the tier list. But anyway, when we do the tier list again, you can be assured that this is going to be like one of those tier 0 servants. Like he is just really, really, really strong, right? And I definitely think he's one of those servants that is like borderline a must summon. The only reason I wouldn't be like, oh, he is a must summon, you gotta go for him, is that like if you don't have Castoria, it can be like a little janky to use them, right? It's kind of like every other really good card type servant, right? Like say someone like Dante's, it's like, oh, Dante's is really crazy if you have Scotty, right? Or it's like, dang, Arcoid is really crazy. It's like, well, if you've got the setup to make her good and to like gas up her damage a little bit, especially at NP1, Muramasa is a very similar thing where it's like, dude, he's super insane crazy if you've got the double Castoria setup, like if you're able to do that. Otherwise, you'll still be able to do things with him, like you'll still make do, you know, with like say like a Waver and a friend Castoria, but it just doesn't hit the same, you know what I'm saying? But with all that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. Let me know if this was a catalyst for you to be able to pull Muramasa, and I will catch you guys in tomorrow's video. Peace, late guys.